Good evening, everybody. It's about 6 o'clock, so I want to be consistent, but also prompt and respectful of your time. Let me begin. This is because of the number of people here that may be here elected-wise. This is an official public meeting, so I need to know for you that back in the back of the room, Kim with our county clerk's office has a copy of the Open Meetings Act if anybody wants to see that. And when we get to the question and answer period, if you can, I want to ask you to state your name so she can record that and be on record with that. With that, let me note out in the back of the room, and I'll remind you of this at the end also. We got some flyers back there, particularly for some community forums that we're having, the second of a series of community forums that we're having on disproportionate minority contact. That's DMC, and racial ethnic disparities one-on-one. That flyer is in the back, and if you haven't, I'll encourage you at the end to get that. As we try to educate the community to what's going on here with that particular issue and where it lies in the juvenile justice system. Tonight is the last of a series of about 4 forums that we've had on this. We've had a forum in UNO. We had a forum Monday night at the Salvation Army in South Omaha. We had a forum Tuesday night in St. Robin's in West Omaha, and this is the last. I'm going to alter my presentation a little bit to get straight to some facts, because the thing is that we've had about 3, or 2 particularly, about this topic here in North Omaha, about some programming. There are a few forums that have happened outside of that too. And so the thing that has not happened here is the presentation of the building on the new site, which you'll see tonight. Let me note by beginning, this project is centered around 3 principles, 3 things that are key to it when we went there. And that's Douglas County space needs for juvenile courts, the improvement of our juvenile justice system with the transformative design to serve children and family, to make sure that it's trauma-informed, but also to try to design and inspire civic pride. When we say that, we're not just talking about the design of a building, we're talking about civic pride in respects to the reforming of the juvenile justice system and trying to put our brick in the wall that's being built around this country and the steps to reform juvenile justice. People are doing it across the country, and people are building on what other people are doing, and we're trying to put our brick in there to try to continue that effort to reform the system across the country. With that, I'm going to bring up a slide, and I'm going to talk a little bit off this. To get right to it, in 2010, Douglas County began the process of becoming what's known as a JDAI, Juvenile Detention Alternative Initiative site. JDAI is a national process by the Casey Foundation that was started probably about 20 years ago. Douglas County decided to make the effort to become a part of that site because of a issue that we had in the Juvenile Detention Center, where we had an average at the time of about 220 kids. Our capacity of that facility was 144 kids. We became a JDAI site. One of the things that you do is you go and you take a visit to a sister site. We went to Multnomah County, which was Portland, Oregon. There we entered and had a lesson there about what they did, but we had it in a facility that was encompassed all in one. Everything to do with juvenile justice was encompassed in one facility. From that point, when a group of us went there to Multnomah County, we had a vision here that can we get to that point with our juvenile detention efforts. Since that period of time, we worked with the state for some reforms and had some reforms implemented in partnership with the state to reform our juvenile justice system. We also, with that site of a one-stop center, began some conversations. 6 years ago, we had a conversation about the possibility of that one-stop site being at 42nd Street. Around 4 years ago, we had a conversation about that one-stop site being at the Federal Reserve building, located roughly between Harnum and Harney, around 20th Street. Last year, the worlds came together with some interest from private donors and the will of the board to have this site located downtown across from the current courthouse. That vision came together because of the possibility of MUD's interest in moving their facility, and we had some back and forth about sites, but now we are at the site there at MUD. Our goal there is to have a one-stop facility, be able to serve family and children better. Now, I say that to set up this and explain to you a little bit from the middle on. The middle is the conversation we're having about the building. The building's got a lot of hype, but the building is just a continual phase in our efforts for reform. Quite frankly, the building is going to be the easiest part of reform. When you have to get to the programs and making this work, that's when everything goes. From there, I want to take you up to the upper left-hand corner where it says System Oversight. As part of our JDI effort, we've brought on a youth center expediter. What an expediter does is right now the total number of kids in there today is 72 kids. For the kids that are sitting there waiting placement somewhere, this person's job is to work with all the surrounding services to try to move that kid through the system as fast as that kid can go. Make sure a kid doesn't sit there idle and try to get them out to the services that they need. Because in Nebraska, juvenile justice is rehabilitative, meaning if you're an adult and you get sentenced, you serve your time there. As a juvenile in Douglas in county government, you sit in the county waiting to get a service, or if you did something serious, you're waiting to be adjudicated and transported over to East Omaha to the Nebraska prison system. The expediter is meant to get all those kids waiting there for service through that system. And also we started some efforts recently with some high-level officials to really try to move some things through some blocked areas. From there, I want to take you down to the lower right-hand corner. The lower right-hand corner is a law that was passed last year, LB 1112. And LB 1112, and I need to probably start referring to it as this, is Statute 43-251.01 in state law. That basically says that what I explained to you about a kid who sits in Douglas County Detention Center being there waiting for placement, there are a lot of kids there number-wise that are sitting there waiting for placement, or because they don't have placement, and the Douglas County Youth Center becomes their de facto placement. This law says a kid needing services can no longer sit in detention. You have to put them in that service. This escalated and put, when we started designing the building, we planned for this law's implementation in the building. So when you see the design, and the design says that it has 64 beds, our hope is this law, when it takes effect, will not allow a kid to sit in placement after July 1. That gets us there to this. So with this law in place, that's happening right now in January. The building is 3 years away. So if you open the slide back up and you go down to the lower left-hand side for you, these are some of the efforts that we've tried to work on. I won't start in any particular order, but let's start with Child Savings Institute. Child Savings Institute is one of the efforts that is beginning, and we hope that will start up here in about a month or so with state approval on a couple of privacy matters. Child Savings Institute is a culture shift, but also a way of trying to get away from kids having to go down to detention to even begin to get services. Right now, how the process happens, if a kid gets arrested, that kid is taken down to the detention center, and probation goes down there and gives them an assessment. There is research that says, you don't want a kid to set one foot in detention if they don't need to. The culture change that happens with that is that the kid, and we're going to start out with the pilot for misdemeanors and low-level offenses, will go be transported to CSI. That kid will be dropped off by the police, and right there at that point, they'll get the analysis by probation, and hopefully Child Savings Institute will then try to evaluate those kids and put them in services and connect them to services right there. So they don't have to sit in the detention center to wait for services. They will be able to go home and return back to court. Second thing we've been working on is we have some capacity issues with shelter care. What we've been working on is shelter care services for girls and shelter care services for boys. For girls, we've worked an agreement out with Utah Holly to expand the capacity that they have for shelter beds for females. For boys, we're in the negotiations with an entity, but that's not closed, and we're not comfortable saying that yet until we get that deal closed. That hopefully will increase the capacity for shelter beds for boys. You have a mention here of the Omaha Home for Boys, housing, and developing services. This is going to be a day reporting center. There's a lot of day reporting centers around, but the distinction about this day reporting center is that this day reporting center is going to hone in specifically on behavioral health. So kids that may be sitting or sitting in the detention center right now, as a way to stabilize their behavioral health issues, will be able to be home and during the day go to this reporting center to have the services and things they need to stabilize their behavioral health, so they don't have to sit in the detention center to do that. They'll be able to be home with families and go from that point of view. And down here where it says UNMC/Charles Drew Behavioral and Mental Health Services, also with Creighton University, this is another way to try to get at a situation we have with kids staying in detention too long. Kid comes in, they get an evaluation. If they have some behavioral health matters, they have to get an evaluation. The time of that evaluation is an issue because of the capacity of mental health professionals. The partnership with UNMC that we have allows us to try to speed that evaluation period up and allow that kid to go home with his family and be managed by Charles Drew and their behavioral health services, so they don't have to sit in the jail to have their behavioral health situation managed. This, we hope, will cut down the time that the kids being there and not have the jail become a de facto mental health facility with managing kids' behavioral health stability. And lastly, we've been partnering with Sherwood Foundation for years. One of the things that the Sherwood Foundation is committed to is a lead gift for a next level of mental health care for about 18 beds. Right now, and at any moment, there's probably around 16 to 12 kids in there that need a level of behavioral health services that the jail is serving as the behavioral health facility for them, because there's not a level there, and we hope that'll be in place. Lastly, if you go out to the upper right-hand corner of this slide, with the assistance of Commissioner Borgeson, who's here, we had outreach to us from a organization called Promise. Promise connected with her at a conference and was intrigued by their reading on us and some things that we were doing in juvenile justice. They have piloted with some counties in California, and they wanted us to be a pilot with them to try to help us make our data analysis more robust. So we're right now in the process of negotiating with the state, the Chief Justice, to ask for probation and the juvenile court to be a part of this, in addition with our detention center, to be able to begin the process of increasing our data analysis, to be able to really get ahead of the situation, see where facts are, and try to dig in and have a stronger database process to be able to address the juvenile justice system. And lastly, I mentioned to you the seminar, the forum that's happened with DMC. When you become a JDI site, and this seems to be a common piece, JDI has a real strong data presence. When you dig into it, the lower level cases, the easy one to solve, are the ones that get there. The smaller the population gets, the harder the kid is to serve. So when we went down from 210 and then gradually went down, when those numbers are there now, the situation that sticks out like red alert is a big number of kids that are kids, brown, black, Native American, of color. Majority of them African American. So the Burns Institute is a nationally recognized institute that works with everybody over the country, and they're going to come in with us to help do that, in addition to some efforts we made in respects to having a DMC coordinator. So with that is a little bit of the history of how we got here today, what we're doing now. Bruce will give you a little bit of the visibility of the building, and then the hope is to answer any and all questions you have and dispel any myth that you might have to some degree. So with that, I thank you again. We'll go to Bruce.
Thank you, Commissioner Rogers. As Chris was pointing out, the center of all this and what ties this together in a large part is the facility, and making that facility be an efficient layout for the system to work, and all of the programming that's being either in place or will soon be in place. And I think Chris said January on LB 1112, it's actually July, so it's right around the corner, and that'll have an impact on the number of kids. The big idea in all of the policies and the design of the building is to help reduce the number of kids that are in detention, because they can get better care in alternatives, and if they are in detention, reduce the amount of time, the average length of stay. So making it more efficient and getting opportunity for improving the court dates and the assessments, so that they don't spend they're not there one day longer than they need to be, and that's a big the big idea here. So just in kind of general terms, as it was pointed out, this is something that's been discussed for years, and part of what's pushing this forward is the space need for more courts. And the Hall of Justice, the current Hall of Justice, was built in 117 years ago. So the space demands and the pressure on that building has kind of reached its peak. So we're planning a new judicial tower that's about 140,000 square feet, 8 stories tall. And it includes some community programs on the first level that will help support the juvenile justice system. It includes 6 finished courtrooms, and then there's space to add 2 more courtrooms in the future. So 6 will be fit up and 2 will be shelled so they can be fit up if new judges are appointed. And look, that's looking to the future to accommodate space in the future. And then offices for the public defender and county attorney, which are in the existing Hall of Justice and really kind of busting at the seams, both of those departments. So in the new tower, those are the services and the people that will occupy the building. And then as part of this acquisition of the MUD site, it included their existing building, which is a nice benefit for the county to be able to renovate that existing building. That's really, they've taken good care of it, so it's in good shape. But we'll renovate that to accommodate probation services, and also the entire first floor will be for community programs and community services. A meeting room like this for the community, space for the providers of the programs that Chris had outlined initially to be on site and provide immediate services, space for the UNMC Charles Drew psychiatric counseling for kids that we're also seeing as unfortunately that's a big need in the population that we're looking at. So that'll be part of the community programs. And then the last building structure will be the youth center, and that's being planned for 64 beds, and they're in eight room modules. So there's 8 kids in one module, and they have support services, and then another module of 8. In total, that'll be 4 stories and 60,000 square feet. And then there's a connector to the existing courthouse for the attorneys, the county attorneys and public defenders, because there'll still be courtrooms that they use in the adult system in the Hall of Justice. All of the services in these buildings will be for the juvenile system. So some of the amenities, just in description, it will be a full-size high school gymnasium as a recreation space in the youth center. And the youth center is the residential where the kids stay overnight. It's a secure facility, but trying to provide amenities that make their stay more engaging. There's education facilities, health facilities, library and technology, and an outdoor recreation space. And kind of the big key is a direct connection to the courts and to the judicial tower where their attorneys are that they need to talk to. It's an easy walk, and now it's a transport from the youth center that may be up to a day for a 15-minute court hearing. It's a day transport, and it's done twice a day. And then for the Justice Center, again, the direct connection to the youth center, the community rooms, direct connection, the skywalk to the Hall of Justice, secure parking below the building for the juvenile judges, and then secure circulation within the facility. So even though the kids are moving from the youth center to the courts. That's a secure movement. They have their own elevators, so it's a separation of the general public and these kids, and a separation for the judges for security reason. So everything I just described is on this slide. If you're familiar with the area, the Hall of Justice, or the original courthouse, is on the top of the slide. And then Harney Street bounds our side on the north and Howard on the south. 17th on the east, and 18th isn't labeled, but it's on the west. So the new Justice Center Tower, the 8-story tower, the youth center is four stories, and then the existing MUD office building. And then we have a nice public courtyard in between that will be kind of at the entrance of all of these buildings. And then a connector between the MUD building and the Justice Center. So this is just a section cut through that shows the 8 stories of the tower, the parking, the community and lobby space, 2 levels of courts, and then the upper floors are attorney offices. And then this smaller block is the youth center with the lobby on the street level, two levels of housing, and then the recreation, the outdoor recreation, and the gymnasium on the top. So this is an image of the public courtyard with the MUD building on the right side and the new tower on the left side, and the connector that has the colored pattern on the back between the MUD building and the new tower, and then the youth center kind of behind that connector. And then showing the skywalk connection to the Hall of Justice, the existing courthouse building. Again, this is Harney Street, and OPPD building is on the left side of the image, and the MUD building that we're renovating on the right. So this is the youth center, and we tried to use materials and scale that's compatible to other residential downtown, other residential buildings, urban residential. So the first level are the offices and the administrative space for the youth center, and then the 2 levels of housing, and then the top level is the open to the sky outdoor recreation area. And then the connector, you can kind of see the colored glass that connects the 2 buildings behind. So any youth that's in the youth center, it's a traumatic experience. Even for one night, you can imagine going into a space that not only is unfamiliar, but it's an instance where you've been arrested and you don't know what's going on or anything about what the future might be. So we try to de-escalate that trauma and make it more calming. It's called trauma-informed design. So we look at colors and textures and wood. These are things that we're designing these differently than they have been in the past, where they're more like jails or corrections. This is not. The kids have not been to court yet, so they're being held here. They haven't been adjudicated, meaning they're not guilty at this point or found guilty. So we're trying to make it an environment that it brings all of that tension down and creates a better space. So daylight, the type of furniture, and bringing the kids together in a common area are all things that improve that experience and reduce the trauma or drama. So this is an individual room. Again, daylight, pretty simple in finishes, but again, trying to make it a little more humane and something that doesn't feel like a cell. So. And Kevin is the architect that's been doing a lot of work on this and the design work. So we also, when we're dealing with youth, we try to provide a design that resonates with kids. It's different than something that we would design, for the general public, all ages. This is more, we try to tune the design more for youth. And so on the roof, this is the outdoor recreation space that's right off the gymnasium. We're try to use natural plantings because nature has a healing effect. So in this, as a restorative environment, we try to look at elements that also are in a sense healing. As Chris said, the first trip that some of the county board members went on to was Portland. We visited 6 sites that all had comparable population or comparable demographic. This one's a little bit of an exception. Hennepin County is Minneapolis, which is more than twice the size of Douglas County population, but it's an urban co-located example, so it was informative to our design in that regard, but it was also informative because you can see new development that's going on around the facility, and this facility's been here 2 decades, and you're getting $1 billion of investment around the facility, which is right in the middle where that red target is, almost unassuming in this particular environment. The other thing are the numbers. For a county that's twice as large, their average daily population is 45, when today we're at 72. So, we're trying to get those numbers down and get the kids in more supportive programs. Ramsey is St. Paul. It's right across the river from Minneapolis, so it's almost identical in population and demographic. Again, an urban setting, and you can see the mixed-use development around. Again, the red target is the youth center and courts, and just a couple of years ago they built a children's museum right across the street, a really nice children's museum. So again, it hasn't hampered development, and that's something else that these show. This St. Paul or Ramsey has an average daily population in the youth center of 24. On this slide, it's actually 16 today, so it continues to drop. Kind of a broad estimate of cost, construction cost, the tower, the renovation of the MUD building and the skywalk in construction dollars is about $69 million. The youth center is $27, but with a $5 million gift from the Sherwood Foundation, that reduces the county's cost to $22 million. And their gift is specifically to the youth center. So all of the other project costs are equipment, like the AV equipment in this room, or the seating, or all of the things that need to go into a building to make it function. And then consulting services and testing through construction. And there's also a $5 to $5.5 million project contingency, which is just a reserve for unknown things that could come up. So that comes to $114 million for the bond. And this is, it was just a $66 million bond that was used to acquire the property. So everything that we've shown or talked about today is in the $114 million. So the last slide that I have, I think we want to reduce the number of kids and their length of stay in the detention because it's the right thing to do for the kids. but it also has a positive impact on the economy. And this is a study that is being led by Dr. Ernie Goss, and he's got a couple of others that are working with him to look at if we were able to reduce the number of kids in detention and keep them out of the correction system, change their trajectory, what impact would that have? And so this is looking at a 20-year window. The bond is actually a 30-year term on the bond, and we have some numbers we're also looking at in that. But in a 20-year, if we're able to change the trajectory of those kids, keep them out of corrections, and have them become productive individuals in the community, that it's a big thing. On the economic side, the total benefits are $164 million. The cost of the bond with we just assumed 30 million of the 114 was associated with the youth center, so we're looking at the youth center. And the cost of that is 39 million because of the interest over the 30 years. And but the overall benefit, for every dollar invested, you get a return of over $4, which is a big deal. And if you extend this out to 30 years, the numbers become over 200 million in total benefits, and for every dollar, it's over $6 of a return. So we've seen this in studies nationally that are very similar, but we wanted to test it to the Douglas County economy and see actually how it compared, and it's in the same range. So we've seen for every dollar invested $5 of return, which is a really good investment. And so with that, we can open it up for questions.
So, before we open it up, I want to just wrap this thing a little bit. When I mentioned at the beginning that we've been at JDOT site for probably about 9 years. The trip that he noted that we took to Minneapolis, they've been a JDOT site for probably about 15 years. So at their 10-year mark, they kind of did a refresh or reanalyzation of where they are to double down and see what changed and what they needed to adjust, so it wouldn't be stagnant, but still they'd be able to adjust to the circumstances around them and dig in. So I say that in respects to we're close to that point. And this wholeheartedly is a continuation of that effort, I think, to say that the board's doubling down in its efforts to try to address this matter and change the paradigm. And for the part of this big juvenile justice system, kind of go to another level on our leg of the juvenile justice system and how we're trying to better the lives of the children and families. So with that, like I said, we're here to 7:30 officially. If there's any questions after that that don't get answered, we'll be here to answer those. And so if there's anything that you got that we can answer or debunk, we're glad to do that. Yes, sir.
Hey, Chris.
So you missed the part. It's official public meeting, so I need you to say your name for the clerk.
Paul.
Did you get a chance, did you see that email? I think I sent it this last week. I came across it. It was Kansas and the statistics on their efforts to eliminate detention. Does that ring a bell?
I did.
The number was 63% reduction. And I read the article. I was just going to try and ask you for your feedback on it because I was
Juvenile?
Yeah, it was juvenile, and they were talking about eliminating detention even in group homes. So I was just wondering if you get a chance to look at it. It's the Pew Charitable Trust. It's an article from them, but they talked about keeping a lot of intensive services to keep kids and their families, which I'm kind of confused about how that's going to work. If you guys are looking towards that model, but that 63% was, I just tried to pull it up on my phone, but I don't have Wi-Fi here, so.
I would think that is an admirable goal, but like I said, I think this I think is the redoubling down of the process to try to get to that point. The point that gets us there, I think, is one, if this proceeds like We hope it will. There'll be the additional, in addition to the $5 million that was noted here from Sherwood for the building, there's another commitment of $5 million for services. The hope is that can be used to get there. Also, we hope that there's a continuation with the state of some policy change. And, you know, the hope is with the board becoming better educated with that, the board in places, let's say like Ramsey for sure, they started out with 2 board members digging in on that. Before that, the board got up to speed and they were able to push that from the top down. So the hope is to get to a place where they're at. You know, there's an increased resource, there's an additional partnership with the state for policy change, and then there's also a new reawakening with the key decision makers at the time, which like other judges and the prosecutors, but that's definitely the goal.
Well, yeah, I just looked at I just pulled up the graph. It's pretty dramatic. It starts off in 2015, average monthly population of youth in out-of-home placements was 878. Then in 2016, it was 734. 2017, it was 482. And then 2018, it was clear down to 321. That's reduction in out-of-home placement. So I don't know what they're doing down there, but it sounds like it's something to check out.
The state, and you know, I see a former state senator here. That state is, if we're a red state, that state, if we're a red state, Kansas is blood ruby red. And if Kansas can do that, you know, I see no reason we can't. I mean, most of the surrounding states, that's Kansas. Minnesota surrounding us to some degree, you know, they're basically committed to not putting the kid outside the home unless it's an absolute piece. So, you know, when we sit here and talk about, you know, is it possible? There's no doubt it's possible.
How many of the services do you have are home-based as opposed to like, you know, like group homes like Boys Town or Omaha Home for Boys? How much stuff do you have built into your model here that's going to be just focused on real intense home? Because obviously you're going to have to use real intensive services for home-based services, but that sounds like what they're doing in Kansas. It sounds like something that should be built into your model if you're trying to get those numbers way down.
Yeah, so the question, and it's been asked a couple of times, you know, I'm not saying, I don't think we're saying this project's not going to slow immediately the out-of-home placement piece. The out-of-home placement piece would take a substantial investment by the state. So for instance, you know, the example I use is we got a health center, we subsidize our health center, our Douglas County Health Center for long-term care and other things like that, we subsidize that to a tune of $16 million. The out-of-home placement availabilities that are here, that people are getting sent to, when you hear stories of kids getting sent to Canyon State, not only are we sending people there, people from Texas, people from Washington, D.C. are sending them there so they can be the economy of scale. You know, it's fair to say that a lot of the decision makers don't have a lot of confidence in Kearney and Geneva, which is supposed to be our version. So for us to get there, you know, like I said, this is our leg in the system, but there will have to be some substantial investment by the state to get there for the out-of-home placement piece.
The in-home, a lot of it's probation services and day reporting and monitoring and providing services at the home. So
that'll continue to evolve, because like the part that I talked about again about the programs that we're putting in place now based on the need, the program piece is going to be an evolutionary part. At July 1, when that law kicks in, they are going to have to evolve those programs to get there, so it'll come.
Thank you.
The out-of-home placements, though, on the state level have been reduced. So even our folks that we have a big kind of issue with when they were going to Clarinda. So we were down to 4 kids compared to 40 at the end of 2018, and they haven't sent anybody there since then. So probation has made it a concerted effort to actually, they started a program with that wraparound service at home, and to try to keep the kids here, even though it may be an out of home, it's not an out of state, but those are all have been reduced.
I just want to add a comment that it bothers me a great deal that we're not responsible, the county board is not responsible for out-of-home placements. kids being sent to Michigan and Massachusetts and Texas and all these places. The judges do that, and we have no control over the judges. The bench is changing, it's becoming much more progressive, but we do have one judge for sure, and possibly two, that are hell-bent on sending young people all around the country. There's a judge that keeps the children in probation for years. I mean years, 6, 7 years, constantly under her thumb. And so there are a lot of moving pieces, and this has been a wonderful explanation, the best one that we've had of this whole series. Really a terrific job, I might say, Chris. Really, really, and you as well, Bruce. But the point is that we don't control the whole system, so it's really bothersome. And one of the biggest pieces is the out-of-home placements that we have a problem with. Another thing is that the states that are really successful, I believe, and I'll stand to be corrected, successful in driving down the numbers, do not bother with violations of probation. And if we have children who are, they go to court, their life is not organized already, who knows who's at home. Sometimes, in many cases, when my kids went to school, they ran around with some people that had no adult at home. And they had great parties. But trouble was, these young people were totally unsupervised. It was amazing. And anyway, the point of it is that if a child goes to court for some offense and they're put on probation, and then they fail to appear, then there's a warrant for their arrest. And that spirals down. In most of the counties, I believe, that have really great numbers, they don't bother with that. They don't bother with chasing kids who violate probation. They just don't do it. And so we have, I don't know, 100 and some children involved in our system, maybe more, who are in violation of probation. And you go to Oregon and these other places, they don't even bother with that. So there's a whole difference in how our laws are set up. And while I have the microphone, I first of all try to keep it a little short. These guys love this, that I have the microphone. Too late. I know, and she can hit me on the back of the head easily, which she does. Some of the questions I get asked, quite a few, and I'm getting a lot of emails still, but I had 2 or 3 more today. But people want to know, why aren't we doing this at 42nd and Leavenworth? We have a facility there already. Why aren't we remodeling that? All the facilities are there. They're concerned that what we're building is a building that is fixed, that the space is fixed. And what if it doesn't work? And the police came in and they said, we think we need more beds, and so that's why it started out at 48, now it's up to 60-something. And so there is a concern about that. So at any rate, that's out there, and I guess I'd like to hear a public answer to why we're not at 42nd Street. I know there's transportation problems, but we could provide a lift. We could pay Lyft to pick up grandparents and guardians and parents at $15 a trip. We don't have to worry about the bus system that is inadequate and non-existent in some cases.
Ironically, I was going to kind of wrap it up with what you were saying in this way. 42nd Street is not possible because you can't get co-location. Co-location is the key piece. And I think, even though it hasn't been official, I think there's a certain eye test that you can see. It, from a cost standpoint, is the least cost-efficient piece to remodel that facility. You can build one from scratch for less, and I'm sure of that. So that's the issue with that. The point, too, is that you could do the travel out there, but around 11 o'clock, for sure, the parking becomes impossible. And so the other piece, too, is from what you see in every one, and the one that we've had, there's been examples. 64 is not impossible, but this is the analogy that I'll use. For instance, Mike has 5 kids.
Yep.
He and his late wife moved to a condo. They downsized. Kids don't need to come back because they got their way.
That's part of the plan.
And but this is the point. We don't control the judges. But for the last 10 years, we were at 144 beds. Then we brought it down 20 beds. People screamed and said, what are we going to do? Then we brought it down from about 120 where it's really operating at 96 now. So this has been gradually getting brought down. The building is a part of the program, and not only in being trauma informed, but it's the point that you can hit. We're building 64 beds. People say we need 100. I don't need 100 beds. You don't need 100 beds. We're not going to lock up 100 kids. 64 forces the system to go. So just like when you raise your kids, you downsize, you don't need to come back home. We've got money in the system. You don't need to come back in.
Chris, I get asked, when I say that, and I try to defend it, people say to me, well, of course it could be co-located. I mean, it could be co-located. The difficulty is the judges have to go and they don't want to go. That's really the problem. The judges, again, they don't want to go to 42nd Street. Well, believe me, if the judges were there, the attorneys would go, the county attorney, the public defender, and so would the private attorneys. I mean, and the site, and I defend that. I said, well, yeah, but, I try to defend it, and it's difficult. But the site out there, I mean, you could tear that building down, or a big chunk of it. It still has the green site. It's next to the golf course or whatever it is over there. There's some greenery already. And one of the things that was brought up to me by a practicing attorney was that the number of beds, while you have 62, that all those beds are not operational because you have to separate children by the gang they belong to. They have to be separated by sex, boys and girls. And so by the time you have a 62 bed operation, you may be down to 50 or even lower that you can actually use. So it gets to be a little bit murky. And those are the things when I try to defend it, believe it or not, I try to. And those are the comments I get back from taxpayers. And they say, it's already there, why are you doing this? And those are some of the things I hear, and I don't want to talk anymore. So I'm going to give the microphone to this young lady over here. I have a bum leg, so. Thanks.
Hello. Hi, my name's Apoorva. I'm a Creighton medical student, and I'm here with some peers as a part of an organization called Justice in Medicine. First of all, thank you for that presentation. It was really informative. I'm really happy to hear that you guys are focusing on restorative justice as well as addressing the mental health aspect and as well as the educational aspect. So I have two questions. First is, do you think that placing a correctional facility in an already underserved area would further disadvantage an already underserved community? And two is that, have there been alternatives to this plan proposed? And if so, have you considered those alternatives at all?
So one of the first things we did was look at six different sites. Are you saying it should be in an underserved, or?
I'm saying it shouldn't be, because perhaps it would drive businesses away.
Right.
For example, there's no grocery stores. Maybe grocery stores would be more hesitant.
Okay. So you're saying the area that we're looking at is underserved?
Yeah.
Okay. So the first thing we did was look at 6 different sites. One was 42nd, and then we looked at 5 others downtown, the Capitol, the old Capitol site, and a couple sites fairly close to this site. And the thing that we heard from the other cities and communities that we visited, DC, Baltimore, Johnson County, and Kansas City area, and we also had some people from King County, which is Seattle, come here. All of them said the top priority is co-location. So we have a strong connection to the legal community, and I know they can be mobile, but a majority of the legal community is centered around the courthouse because that's where the action is. And so some of the expansion we needed were for not only the courts but the other attorneys, so they needed to be close to the courthouse. So if you put those together, it pretty quickly focused on the site or the immediate area we were looking at. And I hope, maybe that may be an explanation, Commissioner Boyle, as to the questions you get asked. And, well, those are the things. And
I don't feel sorry for the attorneys.
Yeah. Well, they can move, but the other thing is the movement of the kids. And the number one traumatic experience is moving those kids in handcuffs and shackles, and that's how they're transported there and back. That could change maybe in the future, but that's still that is the most traumatic experience while they're in the youth center. So then the other thing, the examples that we showed of these complexes that have been in the downtown area for decades haven't slowed down. There's a restaurant across the street from both of those. They're mixed use, there's residential. So it hasn't impacted that development. And I don't know. So I would say that it hasn't hampered. In fact, 114 million probably will create more vibrancy. You'll have the courts and the probation. Some of those exist, but any new development is going to help that area.
And I think the other piece to use that, I don't think that part of downtown would be considered a distressed area. So I don't think that part of downtown would be considered a distressed area. And there's been some discussion about that, but, I think anybody that didn't know what this facility was would know it's going to be a youth facility, and the real dangerous individuals are blocked to the south of it, at the Douglas County Correctional Center. So the real dangerous individuals are already 1 block south at the Adult Correction Center. So, Tyler.
I was wondering if you could address your second question about the alternatives.
Why don't you use the microphone?
Repeat that again, because I thought you were looking at two.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, so we had kind of heard about alternative proposals to this proposal, and we wanted to just hear your considerations.
Yeah, so we did look at the alternative sites in locating the facilities. So through that analysis, that's what drove it to this site.
So we don't actually mean alternative sites, but
There's one official board proposal.
Mhm.
There's an individual on the board that has his own proposal. That's not the board's proposal. That's not the one that's used.
Can you elaborate on that? We just,
Because the core principle of this co-location, and that proposal does not have co-location. Sorry.
If Mike wants to go first.
I only want to make one quick comment that, thank you. There's this presumption that if it's built at 42nd, it's not co-located. That is just not in the picture. The plan is that it would be co-located there as well. It just means that the courtrooms, we had so much opposition to building a courtroom inside the adult facility. The presiding judge says, we're never going there. You go ahead and build it, we'll never set foot in it. Now it's used constantly, every day of the week practically. And so it's in a secure setting. And the idea that 42nd Street wouldn't be co-located is not accurate. So that just, it means the judges would have to go there, which they don't want to do. But this bothers me. You made a terrific presentation tonight. And it just bothers me to hear this fallacy about it not being co-located at 42nd. It could be. So anyway, that's all I'm saying, and I'll try not to talk anymore.
Just to answer that, it wouldn't be co-located, because the idea, juvenile and adult are distinctly different. You can put a judge at the adult facility because you don't operate under the principle of the same judge addressing the family. You can put a courtroom over there, but you can have a different judge with the family, and that would hold up the whole thing. The point about co-location is being able to put efficiency in and everything else. This plan, the plan that's out there proposed-wise will not get co-location, because you could co-locate it, but then it gets back to cost. And it will cost more to redo that facility than the building, and that will basically cost more to get there.
22 million.
There isn't room for an entire regional courthouse out there. What Commissioner Kavanaugh proposed was one courtroom. That's not co-location. You still have 7 courtrooms downtown. Many of us started off favoring the 42nd Street location.
Yeah.
And for many years, that's where I dreamed of having juvenile courts until we got looking for where are you gonna put it. There isn't room unless you tear other buildings down. As you know, we have to provide that space to the state. If we tear those buildings down, we have to replace it somewhere else. There is not room for an entire courthouse out there. Commissioner Kavanaugh suggested one courtroom, which does very little to address the transportation problem. It doesn't get at the co-location we're after. That would be my response.
Okay, well, I think we could, I mean, I'm sorry, but I think we could, and I don't like the idea that if you do it at 42nd, these kids are hauled around in chains. That is really not accurate.
That's the truth.
Yes, it is, yes, it is.
Not if you co-locate everything
Stop.
there.
But you
Not if you
can't.
co-locate.
Okay.
Come on, son.
So,
We'll move on.
you know, I don't feel comfortable kind of talking about a plan, somebody else's plan. I've never done that. I could spend 15 minutes and.
Bruce, this was the county's plan until this came about. This was what Mary Ann and I supported and Chris supported and I think Claire did at the beginning. So this was a plan and
Yeah.
it's gone.
Well,
So
okay.
it was a viable plan at one
No,
time.
no, we never said that plan.
Mary Ann did, and so did I.
I supported the idea, but there was never a plan put together and when we tried, that was when we found out it was gonna be a challenge.
Call it what you want.
There's a lot of misinformation out there.
There is, and then you don't have to call kids around and change. That's just really.
So-
Those are bad words.
I agree, but.
Okay, so, my name's Tyler. I can speak to this on a couple issues. One, I went through the juvenile justice system. I was on probation, I was on house arrest, I did all those things. I'm also a state certified correctional officer who has worked inside correctional facilities both on a county level and a state level. And what I can tell you, on professional opinion, this correctional facility worries me. So in the state of Nebraska, a governing body called the Nebraska Jail Standards Board has to give approval to any correctional facility before it's built. That has not been done yet. The Nebraska Jail Standards Board hasn't approved this project. So you're asking us as taxpayers to pay for a building that doesn't have the green light, and that's concerning. And to the note of they're transported in shackles between downtown and 42nd Street. That is an internal policy with the sheriff's office. So if you want that to change, you as a county board go to the sheriff's office, which reports to you, and say, we don't want this. So you're telling me that the Douglas County Sheriff's Office does not report to the county board?
It reports to the taxpayers.
We control their budget, but they determine what they do.
None of the elected officials report to us.
Some of the county boards.
They can
don't
close
have
their
any report.
office at 2 o'clock if they want. And keep it closed on Wednesday. Clara, you're a longtime member of the board, you can state it too. They don't have to report to us at all. If they remodel their office, they can do it. And get a supplemental budget.
So then change it to where Douglas County Corrections does the transport.
That's
What's gonna be the difference?
So,
It's statutory. That's
Well,
statutory.
nobody's, the thing, this is a must, and believe me.
and no one,
Believe me, nobody is trying to spend more money than can, that's a cost that the board's not gonna bear.
so, trust me, no one argues that we don't need courthouse space. The juvenile courts need more space.
What's your question?
No one's arguing that.
What's your question?
What the argumentative piece comes from is the youth center. Because the county board has been not very transparent from the beginning. And you've changed that since the start of this project. You know, holding meetings like these and doing all of these things is making this more transparent. But
You got a question, or you wanna break a little talk?
so,
That's actually a question.
okay, so, couple questions. So Hennepin County has two facilities. They have the facility that you showed, which they utilize as what can usually be called as a holding facility, where the juvenile goes there, they hold them for 24 to 48 hours, and then they determine if they need to go home, or if they need to go to their other facility, or if they need to go to maybe some other community placement, things like that.
They don't hold them until they go home, they hold them if they need to be detained. Their immediate
So, does that mean that Douglas County is going to build 2 facilities or just 1?
Douglas County, there's, as I told you at the beginning, Sherwood has agreed to be the lead gift on an 18-bed next level mental health facility. The rule of principle is you don't build a new building without also considering what to do with the existing building. And as we talked about Tuesday night, there are some strong discussion about what next level 42nd Street can go to. It will be premature because we don't have the other deal there, but the conversation that was being talked about with out-of-home placement, there are some interest in trying to do that there and make it possibly go to scale. So that is what the plan is, what I can say about it, and the desire is.
But to be clear, they have a detention center like we do.
Mhm.
They have a residential center similar to Boys Town. It's just
Right.
operated by the county now.
Which is 2 separate facilities.
Yeah.
But we have the same thing. We have Boys Town and Omaha Home for Boys. They're just not county. They don't detain kids at their other facility. It's not a secure facility. So it's 2 different things. One's a detention and one's residential supervised stay, like Boys Town.
That's what we're trying to get to.
So if we build this facility, because you've said before that this building is part of the programming, and what are we going to do? So most kids that are in the juvenile justice system, most have problems at home, right? Home life isn't the best, school life isn't the best, whatever the case may be. What is the county board going to do to address those problems? That way we can stop the revolving door in our juvenile justice system. So, for example, when I was in the juvenile justice system, me being at home is what caused 90% of my problems. So, if I would have been removed from the home, right, I would have never went through the juvenile justice system in the first place. So, if we take a child, for example, from North Omaha, who is, you know, for example, father isn't in the picture, mom works 3 jobs to make ends meet, kids involved in a gang, what is Douglas County going to do to try and curve that and get them a better opportunity at life?
Can we say
In
something to
the
that?
presentation, let me ask this question, I'll give you time. In the presentation, when we talked about the new statute, which was LB 1112, that's what probation is doing now with those 4 programs that they continue to do. So that child that's sitting there is not sitting in detention. Also, what I mentioned about the $10 million donation from Sherwood, that's $5 million for the building. There's another $5 million available for program. That, in partnership with the courts and probation, when we talk, the goal is to address that need so a kid is not sent to in detention. So that's the plan that allows us to get out. So the state already by law on July 1 has said that kid can't sit there, so that's going to push it, and we are developing the services to get them.
So that doesn't answer my question. What is the county going to do
That's what we're
in
gonna
the home to help?
Because the services will provide to the families and stuff provided in the home.
And what are those services?
I described to you before, I cannot tell you that because each individual kid is different. That's what the probation officer, the defense attorneys, the attorneys, and the judges all get together to try to prescribe out what that program is for the kid. I can't tell you that. Yes, sir.
Carl Tyler.
It's on the bottom. You slide that.
Carl Tyler. Carl Tyler. As you sit in this building, I'm one of the original founders of Metro Community College. Back in the day.
Can't hear you, but.
I'm one of the, as you sit in this room, I'm one of the original founders of Metro Community College. My fight was for this fort, this place right here. And I just wanted to say that. Next thing, when you drive down 24th Street at 24th and Cummings, we had the Blue Lions Center. I was in the fight for that. Okay? So, Chris, you don't have to talk to me about, and I want to just say this to you, sir. I went to a meeting at North Side that said it had no windows in the room. I saw inside of that, I saw windows in the youth center. And then I saw the next thing is that you had the facility up on the roof, I mean, for the playground or whatever. So the question that he's asking, and the question that I'm gonna start putting out, again, the question that they're asking, is that the community's not involved to the level it should be involved in. You can't do it all. The schools can't do it all. I'm a community developer. I believe in people. I believe the lower they are, the higher they go. I'm from North Omaha, and as I told you, Chris, I'm a hood rat, okay? So I'm not gonna even go into that, you can explain it to some other folks. My whole thing is developing my community. We used to have 14 neighborhood groups. The planning department, after Marty's shooting, destroyed them down to 3. And I've been gone for 18 years. So they're talking about gentrification and all the rest of that stuff. That ain't about what it's about. I hear people talking about money. When you get ready to send our kids over to kill somebody, you don't talk about money. When you get ready to drop a bomb on somebody, you don't talk about money. Creighton is sitting up here, but I don't really see a lot of investment into our community, but I see facilities up there. When I walk through the campus, I don't see a lot of my children that's in this community up there. My job is to work. The building, as far as I'm concerned, is in the right place. Downtown belongs to me just like it belongs to everybody else. I've been out to this place up here, got put out the reading, didn't even deal with it, but that's a whole new story. But they tell me they're down in the ground and all that. They're up in the air. My job is to make sure you don't have not one kid in there. That's the game that I got to play. Okay? The next thing is you're representing, I love you, brother, and I love the mayor over here. We go back a long time. Okay? I know, I'm the mayor right there. We go back a long time. The only thing I'm basically telling you, I thought I could take my rocking chair and be wrecking, but I see I got a lot of work. So what I'm basically telling you is the building is in the right place. The facility is in the right place. It gives us access to downtown. Like I told you before, the whole thing of it, and I'm going to speak from a black perspective, is having more black folks in those positions to be able to help out our community. And I'm not trying to be anything else. I'm just talking about, they always talking about near north. I'm near north. But when we have the proper resources, we can change a lot of things. So what I'm basically telling the build, as far as I'm concerned, I'm not getting caught up in that. If you're going to spend money to send me over to Vietnam, if you're going to spend money to send me to Iraq, then spend some money down there for the kids. But my job is to make sure that none of the kids get down there. But the thing of it is what you're doing right now. We need to start educating the people in the community. It ain't just yours. How many folks do you have from the community that come to your meetings, the county board meetings? How many people do you have that go down to city council meetings? Because we don't feel like we belong down there. How many people do you have out at the Creighton board or whoever run Creighton meetings? Because the thing of it is you're killing off the community. People don't know. So people need to be informed. But you got a job to do, just like I'm saying with the schools. The schools need to come and talk to the community. So maybe I don't want to go inside the school. Maybe I just want to be outside the school to make sure it's safe out there. So that's where I'm coming from. And so, and you, I don't put on thing I'm trying to say. I see you always trying to defend that building. That's some of the community folks get involved in defending the building. So in other words, and you just go on and build it. If we got some problem with it, then we deal with that and say, these are the issue. I'm glad to see that I saw some windows in the room. I was really concerned about it. I'm glad to see that there's going to be a recreation area for the children. But the thing is, you keep us out of it.
Okay, let me get the core of what I think your question is, and the fact is that this is like the third, fourth time we've been in North Omaha. So, I dispute the fact of saying we went open early. Quite frankly, things got hijacked early. So the fact is, I'm not saying, the fact is, I don't disagree with the fact that we weren't open. The process got hijacked, and we had to catch up to what the plan implementation was. But to your point, the point of I defend the building because the building is a part of the program. But the point is to not have one person in there and to put the services back out in the community. Now, this conversation with the building is pretty prescribed. It's a courthouse, it's a detention center. There are prescribed mannerisms that building has to be up to. So there's not a lot of input. But the picture is to give you the whole picture. Now, I wholeheartedly believe this next discussion, because the building is going to be the easy part of this. The programming to serve the kids is the hard part. And that discussion will have to happen with the community. A lot of people, one, the community needs to understand what the services are that are needed. Because yeah, there's a need for people of color in the system, but there's also a point that there are some aspects that aren't there, and they need to get up to speed to be ready to handle that. And so I'm all on board with making, and probation is on board with coming out and explaining this is what it is, this is what the need is. So that discussion also from the community trying to tell us what they think that discussion is, and quite frankly, I think that's a little bit of discussion with the health department that's going on right now, because a lot of these things are health matters. So the next phase is, if this building moves, there's discussion that has to happen with the community, to have them understand this is community space, us explaining to them, we're not trying to put community facilities in, but make it accessible, but get them out at home. The goal is to put the building out of business. If that would be ideal, and I would gladly bear that cost to put it out of business.
Okay.
But I hear you.
All right, like I said, I'm Eric Bergen, and I'm in favor of downtown because, like I said, that building on South 42nd Street, definitely, I don't care how much money you put into it, it still will not be up to par. You know, and I think we had a talk last week, or was it Tuesday?
Yep.
And how much did you tell me it's gonna cost to redo that building?
The alternative plan, I think, puts it at 38 million, I believe.
So, and what was the other cost that you had on it? I seen something like the $90-some million altogether.
Give me 2 seconds.
Okay.
Well, I can tell you this, if the cost is, if that cost that they have is 30 million, it costs 27 million or 22 million to do the new building.
And seeing this, you know I brought that to him, right?
Okay, so courthouse annex, for the alternate plan, HDR's proposal is 92 million, the alternative plan is 73 million. The youth center proposal for HDR is 39 million, and the alternative plan is 23 million.
And
This question, Chris, you stated that it's 22 million after the 5 million
Right.
contributed for the youth center, and let's stay focused on that. And what would it cost out on 42nd to renovate that facility, in your opinion?
23,701,456.
you just said 30-something at first.
I said 39 million, I got the two numbers swapped.
Okay,
Okay.
it's 23 million to renovate out there,
Correct.
and it's 22 million to build a brand new modern structure.
Only because Sherwood Foundation pledged 5 million.
But it doesn't matter where the money comes from. See, that's what I'm saying.
So it's less money, plus, I asked the sheriff, or I asked Brad Alexander this some months ago. He was at our meeting making a report, and there's been some misinformation. And I said, I want to ask you a question. How many days a week are we transporting youth from 42nd out there, 42nd and Woolworth, to the courthouse? He said every day. That's on a recording at our county board meeting. I said, every day? And he said, yes. And that's probably 2 deputies. You've got to be spending $250,000 to do that every day. And then they sit there and wait for the court 3 hours. So when you talk about $1 million more, we don't even know if that number. And I was there again this week. I've been there with the parents and so on 3 weeks ago and so on. The fact is, the youth there cannot go outside. And if somebody says they're looking at a golf course, they can if we put step ladders in every room.
Right.
And I mean, when you see the metal doors and all the things that are there,
It looked like a prison.
It's a very depressing facility, and the offices are really bad. So, you know.
So this HDR's facility.
He's got the microphone, let him finish.
Is still going to be a jail. No matter how many
No.
Well, let him finish that.
Okay, because basically I just wanted to say, because I was offended when he was talking about how the kids are going to be in gangs. I know a lot of kids that are not in gangs and are mothers, single parents, working 2 jobs to take care of their kids. They can't be there 24/7 to watch their kids. Some of them at the age where they can't go to daycare and the state's not paying for it.
Right.
Or you got a mother paying $400, $500 a month for child care. You know, I'm offended by that because, like I said, your kid's not going to tell you what they're going to do. I don't care where you come from. You can have the best of homes, best of care, best mother and father, whatever. If that child decides they're going to do something, they're going to do it. Right. So I don't care where you come from. So to say they're going to be gang members or this and that, what are you gonna do to go in the home to try to change, because the mom working 3 jobs? Why would you take that away from the mother, because she's doing what she's supposed to be doing, to take care of her kids?
But I'm not saying take that away from the mother.
Well, you're putting pressure on her by saying, you know, you're working 3 jobs, you're not doing your job, taking care of your kids.
That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, what are we gonna do to help her?
If you're not putting no money in her pocket, I don't think you're gonna do too much to help deal with the problem. It's just like I seen a lady out there with a child. You know, when we come to these meetings, there's nowhere where you can bring a child to watch someone watch them while you come in here and do what we're gonna do. That's probably why you don't have a lot of turnout, is because they don't provide the service that you really need. And I'm sorry, Chris, to say that, put that on y'all like that, but I'm just saying, there's certain things like that that stop people from coming to meetings in North Omaha.
It's the same concept of the county board meeting is held at 9 a.m. on a Tuesday morning in a location where people have to pay for parking just to attend. Like, it's set up fundamentally so people aren't involved, and that's the problem.
But we can't deal with all of that. I mean, everybody gonna have different time for everything. Just like city council, they meet early. People be at work. Everybody can't make it down there to that, okay? But my point is, this is one of the best projects I've ever seen. I don't see why people don't understand. It's all about money, we understand that, but we pay taxes too. We don't have the same color skin that you may have, but we pay taxes too. You know, so I believe that why we all can't get on board when it's all about the kids. We all want to make sure that they don't even have to go to this place.
Right. Like you and I talked on Tuesday, we both want the same thing.
I'm trying to get you
Let me get in the middle of it, because, but let me, Tyler, let's just answer a question like this. I've seen those numbers, and, you know, there's conversations that Lisa said I've had with people that have done this, that have looked at those numbers, and I think those numbers are disingenuous.
Mike,
Mike.
you know, I'm not gonna make any more comments, but I really would like you, this was an excellent presentation you did tonight, and I'd like you to make this at the county board and maybe even the building commission before I vote. It's an excellent presentation.
It'll be a building commission.
The other night, Mr. Tyler and I were two of the people who were at Clare Methodist, a meeting that started at 6, supposed to go over to 7:30, and I left at 9:15. I think he did too. But there was a presentation by a woman named Lisa Utterbeck, and she was just incredible. I mean, she has a personal history. Her mother was a criminal, and she's done a terrific thing with her life. And she made a presentation there that was just over the top excellent. And she talked about what the public schools are trying to do. First of all, they watch, and I'll just say this, because you have to hear her talk. But the trigger is watching kids not going to school, watching for truancy. And when that starts, the public school intervenes, and they do really good things. All sorts of wraparound services that get a hold of these children and support them in really positive ways. And she speaks so highly and so well of that. We have got to get her, and I checked with Mary Ann, we've got to get her down to the county board to make that presentation. And your presentation tonight was the best of all of these. And even though Bruce starts talking about programming, and I asked him not to, you stick with the architecture. But anyway, but it was really excellent. I hope you'll do it again at the county board. It's really positive.
It'll definitely be at the building commission, but
Do it at the building commission, that'd be great.
The point I need to make, the point I need to make about that is, the beginning of the point tonight that I talked, is that I said, this is the county board's effort in our part of the system.
Right.
Now, the school district has their part, and we know Lisa intimately. She's on the committee with us. Wait, let me get to your point. And at least Mary Ann and 8 more people from the county attorney, the superintendent of detention, were in a meeting with Lisa and the superintendent, where they laid out to us their plan for Strive for 95 and what they were doing. And we offered up to them, you know, any assistance that we could to do that. Now, the chief of probation is having conversations with them. I don't know all of it, but the rumor I hear about is they're talking about the possibility of a dual person, a couple of dual people staff-wise that will have kind of this OPS and probation jurisdiction to kind of get there.
Yeah.
So the wheels are talking, the connection is there. This is our part in it. Now, we've been talking about this for 10 years, juvenile. When Burke was in the legislature, they moved that ball ahead a lot. This thing is just getting the light now, and the public is getting up to speed to educate on it. That's why I'm not worried about the numbers and things, because if the public gets more involved, they'll chime in and ratchet things up to get where they want to get to. So we're talking to Lisa, we're connecting the dots with her, and
Well, Chris, that's my point, because he was asking about what are we doing, what is the county doing about this before we get them? The public school districts and others are stepping up and doing a beautiful job. That was my point.
Yeah.
And the next thing is, because I hate to butt in, but
Come on, Joe.
Hi, my name is Joe Tora, and I support this proposal. Many studies show that youth crime and youth incarceration in Douglas County have declined significantly over the past 10 years. As a result, the smaller youth centers will meet the needs of the county and reduce costs for taxpayers. I support this co-located proposal because I believe that facilities that are focused on alternatives to detention reduce benefits for the juvenile, the family of the juvenile, and the community. So I totally support this proposal. Thank you.
PJ, let me make a point for you after because when PJ said the piece about, you know, he's over there and Mary Ann made that point, I think the thing you gotta understand, and I wanna make this clear, is that, you know, the facility that we're in now as a detention center was built in a time before people really dug into pediatric science and those things and the effects of it. It's built from the concept of an adult jail for kids. And that's why when you speak now of trauma informed and everything of that, that's what this is about. And it's hard to get that out of the existing facility. And we just say that to say that, you know, nobody's saying anything about the people that are there. They're doing the best of what they have. If you walk through the place is clean. It's spotless, but that doesn't take away the fact that it had all those effects on prison, kids. So, you know, this is about wiping that out, completely trauma-informed, and everything. When I say the building is a part of the program, and that building is a part of the programming for the families and those guys to make sure that they're in the best space possible.
Just want to say a couple of things. First of all, I've been at all your presentations, Chris and Bruce, and I gotta tell you, I really want to thank you for the presentation. Speak up a little bit, and information on all of this, and the people's participation.
And the people's participation, thanking Chris and Bruce for the presentation. I also want to be certain that we're always respectful of our youth. And when I hear it called a jail or a prison that we're building downtown, I think that is so harmful and really inappropriate. And I appreciated the last gentleman, your comment about a detention center, because that's what it is.
Yes.
And if we want to keep calling it a jail so they can plan to be in jail for the rest of their life, then we can use that kind of language, Tyler. But I think it's disrespectful and just inappropriate. I also want to say something else. None of us are there, and I know Mary Ann's very passionate about this, as I believe all the commissioners are. But this isn't about us. It's about doing the right thing for the future of our youth, period. That's why Claire and I were in Minneapolis going there at our own expense. I was in another youth center in Maricopa County, and I know others have been at more of them than I have. 4 or 5 that I've been to. That's what it's really about. I could care less about seeing another, I mean, I want to see buildings built, that kind of thing, because I like progress, but I'm not interested in the county building more buildings without a need for those buildings and doing the right thing. That's why I'm so passionate about seeing this come to a conclusion. I'm also wanting to hear from people, and there's a number of young people that haven't spoke, and you're much more important than I am. If you've got questions, let me tell you, or statements you want to make here tonight, it's the best time to make them. And I hope you're not like me. You're afraid to say some things when you were young because you thought somebody will be laughing about it. We won't be laughing. We'll listen to you, and we appreciate it. And if it's a week from now and you call us individually, do it. But let's quit calling it a jail or a prison, please.
So one point he made, let me walk you all back on this. And the point he made is about the building. Everybody said PJ, I got a 10-year-old PJ. they've been on the board longer. The space need has been there. I got on the board in '05. Space need's been there since late '90s. The space need has been there. And we had at the time 5 juvenile court judges. Burke was there when there was never to get an additional court judge. It didn't get through. There was a Senator Chambers, that had an issue with the person on the bench. After some conversation, okay, I'll talk about it. After some conversation, Senator Chambers relented on letting additional judges come on the Douglas County Juvenile Bench. That opened up for 6, but on the floor there was conversation about 6, 7, and 8. And there was a reply back from the county board of saying, whoa, we can't handle 8. Give us the 1 and give us time to get facilities up. That's not a formal agreement, but that was understanding between us and the legislature the legislator that did that. And the board responded with the fact that this is a need. Because I'm gonna tell you personally, there was a lot of people that didn't want the judge for other reasons. But when the time came, the board stepped up. There's no way you can contain 2 more judges in that building. And we're gonna get another district court judge. The building is imminent, but the fact is, when we're talking about what's best for the kids, there's no way you couldn't take advantage of it and try to do the whole system at once. And this is an opportunity that's given there. So, you know, with that, there was a comment made, and I'll turn it over because I want to defend this. There is not one perfect time that you can have a meeting around here and citizens will come. Congress has their meetings 2,000 miles away all day, and, you know, things get there. The legislature has their meetings all day from 9 to there. City council has theirs is at 2, and if there's not a hot issue, they're not there. County board meeting is at 9, but when we were talking about the possibility of outsourcing a few things, the room was packed at 8:30. So people speak with their presence. And so, you know, to defend that point of view, I mean, each elected official, there's no perfect time to meet. You know, there was a period of time where we experimented with having once a month in each district a 7 o'clock meeting to bring the meeting to the community in each district. Most people that showed up, probably about 30 people. Call.
Your point, you know, I really hate to do this a lot because, given my background and all that. But I was in Washington, D.C. for about 5 years. I worked in the worst gang area, if you wanted to call it. I was right in the heart of it. What's the attorney general that was under Obama? I've been in the room with him 2 or 3 times. I see guys on TV that I worked with when I was in Washington, D.C. I worked with dependent children. They wasn't there because anything they did, it was what their parents did. But I worked in that area. I saw how they operate. They are family oriented. They take care of their kids. We took 600 kids on 3 buses to one of the most richest hotels we ever went. And then you know what, at the whole day, the way it was organized and everything, the staff came down and wanted to talk to our children. These was all black children. And told them that they were the best children that had ever been in that hotel. But you know why? Because the community was organized. That's what it's about. The community was prepared. I saw lawyers, and I saw what you're talking about. But I was a community, they call us counselors, but we got to go to school for counseling. But we were counselors. We took our kids where we wanted to take them. We took them on picnics. We took them everywhere. And when I got ready to leave, there, 2 guys came to me. One had just got out of jail. The other one was a leader, and I knew he was a leader. And you told me anything that I ever needed. If I ever needed them, just let them know. I'll give you an example. I went to talk to the 16-year-old, but it wasn't there. So they gave me a room about half the size, and it was all kids crawling on the floor all the way up to about 10 years old. And it was mostly girls. And what happened was, one day I was walking across the school ground, and I didn't pay any attention, I was just walking. All at once, all those kids just broke and ran to me. I don't need this. You don't have to defend anything. What we need to do is do what you're doing. If you're having your meeting when it's time for us to call you, come. See, that's what I'm basically saying. We need Metro Community College to come to these meetings. That's what I fought to keep this here for. We need the other folks coming. It ain't just you by yourself. You are our servant, and we are your servant. And every one of you in here is a person of the community. That don't get caught up in titles. But I know what we got to do, and I know we way behind. But I see progress. That's all I'm saying. And all this other stuff about the dollar, then go tell them guys not to, every time they drop a bomb on somebody, that's $1 million.
I hear you. And being at 7:30, respectful of your time, we're here to answer questions. And to your sentiment and the words of Huey Newton, all power to all the people.